Hey everyone. So I came across this article and it's entitled Trump Names Former PayPal COO David Sacks as White House AI and Crypto Czar. Now, what is a White House AI and Crypto Czar? Well, we'll go on and explain that. But it says President-elect Donald Trump announced Thursday night that former PayPal executive David Sacks will serve as the White House AI and Crypto Czar, which is a newly created position aimed at advancing U.S. policy in artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency. So this is a brand new position. So that right away piqued my interest. In two posts on Truth Social, Trump describes Sacks as a key figure in shaping the future of American innovation and competitiveness. David will focus on making America the clear global leader in both areas. He will safeguard free speech online and steer us away from big tech bias and censorship, Trump wrote. He will work on a legal framework so the crypto industry has the clarity it has been asking for and can thrive in the U.S. David will also lead the Presidential Council of Advisors for Science and Technology. Now, Sacks, 52, a South African-born entrepreneur, was PayPal's chief operating officer and was part of a group of prominent Silicon Valley figures who worked at the payment processor in its early years. He co-founded the venture capital firm Craft Ventures and launched Yammer, which is an enterprise software company acquired by Microsoft for $1.2 billion in 2012. Trump lauded Sacks' track record as a successful entrepreneur and investor. Now, the president-elect announced the nomination as Bitcoin surged past 100,000 for the first time on Wednesday. Trump, who once dismissed cryptocurrencies as a scam, has pivoted to championing them as central to his economic strategy. So Donald Trump has changed his mind about cryptocurrencies. During his campaign, he pledged to make the United States the, quote, crypto capital of the planet, and to establish a national Bitcoin reserve. Now, if you are not familiar with cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin or blockchain, let me just give you a background because this is really essential in understanding the Bible, what the Bible says regarding the prophetic nature of our economy and where this is all headed. And that's why it piqued my interest, because Donald Trump is now creating a brand new position within the government that's going to oversee artificial intelligence and digital currency. So that's what Bitcoin is. It's digital currency. Now, what it's going to be backed by, I don't know. A lot of people say it's going to be backed by gold, etc. But we know it's all going to be included in this blockchain technology. So Investopedia says that Bitcoin was introduced to the world in 2009, and it was intended to revolutionize the way people could access and control their money. Now, the cryptocurrency's first decade was marked by scandals, missteps, and wild price swings. Large-scale fraud, theft, and regulatory battles and more continue to make the headlines. It's difficult to say what will happen over the coming decade, but here are some thoughts about Bitcoin's future. Number one, Bitcoin is most likely to remain popular with cryptocurrency speculators over the next decade. Bitcoin, the blockchain, will probably continue to be developed to address long-standing issues like security. And there is no way to accurately predict what will happen to Bitcoin in the next 10 years. Now, we know that Joe Biden was trying to get a digital dollar implemented through his FedNow system, where there's online trading between banks I believe that was in 2022 or 2023 in July. So we know prophetically, brothers and sisters, that there has to be a digital monetary system controlled by central banks. And I think this step towards Bitcoin and artificial intelligence, and especially with Trump creating a brand new job in the government, is headed that direction. Now, when discussing blockchain and cryptocurrencies, the term decentralization covers two aspects: who holds the majority of the cryptocurrency and where the blockchain is concentrated. So Bitcoin was designed to be decentralized, controlled by the public, and away from the hands of entities that would collect and control it. However, more coins are being purchased by businesses and others with the resources than your common individual, which centralizes control, okay? In 2024, the majority of Bitcoins are still out in the wild, so to speak, but these large entities will likely keep growing their holdings over time if Bitcoin continues to be treated as a speculative investment and store of value. Now, you heard what Donald Trump said in the article. He said that he wanted the United States to be the crypto capital of the planet. And so the United States might very well be a country that helps launch this digital currency, this decentralized banking system, which will actually, I think, be more controlled by central banks, especially when most of the wealthy people in the world will buy up Bitcoin. So again, I just wanted to bring this up because I think this has prophetic significance, especially as Donald Trump created a brand new job within the government and gives it to former PayPal COO David Sacks, who will be now called the White House Artificial Intelligence and Crypto Czar. Keep looking up, brothers and sisters. Jesus is coming back soon. God bless.
Your views on Bitcoin and how do you think of that asset given kind of the macro backdrop?
Well, the thing that's interesting about Bitcoin, I've been interested in Bitcoin since I think I first bought it in 2012, maybe.
Okay.
And we invested in a number of, we're not a crypto investor, but we did express a thesis back in 2017, 2018, that we thought that crypto would graduate from being an institutional asset class from being really more of a consumer retail phenomenon. And so we ended up investing in institutional custody through a company called BitGo. And we also invested in we're the seed investor in Multicoin Capital, which was a crypto-focused hedge fund. We basically believe that, that as crypto matured into an asset class, you would need specialized fund managers, of which we were not really. I'm a SaaS investor. But I'm like, but let's invest in these guys because they're focused on the problem. So we expressed a number of these views, and it generally has worked out very well for us. But in any event, so I've been interested in Bitcoin for a while, and I think the transformational part of Bitcoin is this idea that we could have non-fiat money, right? As we're talking about with the Fed, there is a huge risk of currency debasement when the government is in control, and particularly when you have the world's reserve currency. There's just such an enormous temptation to print money to finance your budget and to rack up loans that become unpayable. We're at like 130% of GDP now we owe. So we owe an amount of money greater than the size of our entire economy or our economic output. That sounds very hard to repay to me. So the temptation will eventually be to monetize the debt away, basically to debase the currency to pay for this debt. That's always been a risk throughout history. And now what Bitcoin offers is a different kind of currency where it's not backed by a government, it's backed by math, it's backed by encryption. And so you don't have to trust the government that there will only be 21 million Bitcoin. It's in the code, and so you just have to trust that Bitcoin effectively won't be cracked. You just have to believe that the system is secure. And I think a lot of people might, over time, gradually think that's a better form of money.
Two other questions around Bitcoin. I guess one is like, do you think it could rise to become the global reserve currency? And whether that's 50, 100, even 500 years from now, like, is the expectation that there would be decentralized money as the core unit of account and kind of store value globally? Or do you think that we'll just get more and more fragmentation and there'll be fiat currencies, there'll be decentralized currency like Bitcoin? Maybe there's even these private currencies that some of these companies have tried to create. Like, how do you think this plays out?
It's hard to know. I mean, Balaji's got this framework where there's basically only three currencies that have scale. One is the USD, sort of the USD American empire. Then there's China, the renminbi, and then there's Bitcoin in the sort of crypto world. And he thinks those are the only three currencies that can get to sufficient scale to be some sort of world reserve currency. I don't know what happens. I mean, I think the question is, can you get to something where Bitcoin is widely used without there being like basically a US dollar collapse or something catastrophic happening? Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that. I think there are sort of middle scenarios where, if you're in a country that had that with like a totalitarian government or something like that, or had export controls, or was extremely repressive, or was being invaded and going through a war, you'd want to move as much of your net worth into Bitcoin as you could, despite the price volatility, because it's portable. You could take it with you. So in that, it's the new diamonds, it's the new gold bars, whatever. So there's sort of that store value argument, even short of it being a fiat currency. But I think it's interesting. It's what we're talking about. I didn't coin this phrase, but the separation of money and state. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, that would be as big an event as the separation of church and state. The church and state used to be intrinsically linked and combined. You couldn't really think about the two without them being together. Now we think about them being separate. I think money and state is kind of like that. We can't really think of money without the state, but Bitcoin, it's sort of this like sci-fi future where you could maybe have these two things decoupled. I don't know how long that takes. I don't, and it's very hard to know like what price you should put on that, which is why I don't like actively speculate on it, because I just don't know what the price level should be. Yeah.
Do you still buy Bitcoin like over time, just as like, hey, I'm just dollar cost averaging, or is this something where, hey, I bought some early on, that's what I got, and I'm going to go focus on SaaS investing, or like how do you think about it?
Yeah, so I have a position in it, and my view is kind of to set it and forget it. I've seen so many ups and downs at this point that I'm just like, look, I'm going to put this amount of money in Bitcoin, and it's some percentage of my net worth. I'm just going to leave it alone, and maybe it'll be worth nothing, but maybe this will become new money over the next 20 years, and in which case I'll feel really stupid if I didn't buy in at a much earlier stage. So I've kind of got like a little piece there, and I just leave it alone and don't try to figure out like these price moves.
Last thing on Bitcoin is there's a very large portion of people in the Bitcoin crypto world that are Bitcoin maximalists. And so they believe, hey, Bitcoin is the only thing, everything else is a shitcoin, it's all going to zero. I don't think you're in that category given some of the investments I know that you've made. What is your argument for or against kind of that maximalistic view when it comes to something like money? Is it something that you understand, but you're like, hey, I'm an investor and I want to go also find productive assets? Is it something where you're like, I don't understand, that view of the world? Just talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a maximalist. I think that the case for Bitcoin is probably the strongest of all the cryptos, and the price and relative stability reflects that. But look, you have in the process of creating Bitcoin, you have these other new technologies arise, like the blockchain itself, and why couldn't you use that to support other, innovations? And so the most obvious one being, the idea of a smart contract platform. And so now you have kind of these other cryptos that function as gas to basically buy computing power on a smart contract platform, like Ethereum, like Solana. That's the space. And then there's all the various applications that potentially could be run on a blockchain, which mainly you've seen in terms of ones that have scale, it's mostly just DeFi. It's mostly financial contracts of various kinds and financial speculation. I think what remains to be seen is what is the breadth of the applications that can ultimately be built on top of blockchains. But I think part of in the exuberance over these types of platforms, I think there's like too many things that actually don't really make a lot of sense where no, you're just better off using a centralized database. So the breadth still remains to be seen. But I think what's interesting is just the financial contracts, the settlement system, the way that you could do derivatives, things like that. It's so much more transparent than what you could get on Wall Street, where they're giving you these like OTC derivatives where you don't really understand what they are. At least with the blockchain, with DeFi, you can inspect the code. So it does seem like a better way to do trading. And we'll see where it evolves to from here. But I guess the thing I'm not totally sure about is the range of applications.